Hello all, welcome to i-tutor Academy. In today's session, we will start with Unit 6, that is Interpersonal Communication of Mmpc 007. Objectives of this chapter: after studying this unit, you should be able to define interpersonal communication, understand the difference between professional and personal communication, understand various diagnostic models of interpersonal communication, identify strategies for personal excellence in superior, subordinate, co-worker, and customer relationship at work. Structure of this unit are: there is an introduction part and defining interpersonal communication, significance of interpersonal communication, principle of interpersonal communication, barriers to interpersonal communication. Interpersonal communication models are there: emotional intelligence and interpersonal communication styles, interpersonal and personal management skills. Summary of this unit are here, keyword section and self-assessment questions also here. Introduction. In interpersonal communication, whether effective or not, it is a constant process in the organization. So interpersonal communication is a constant process and it is inseparable from the essential to everything that occurs in organizational life, regardless of the position one occupies. Effective interpersonal communication skills are essential for the following reasons: it helps to develop professional connections with other co-workers, colleagues, peers, leaders and clients, and it enhances the ability to relate with other people. It facilitates teamwork and collaboration. It results in increased job satisfaction. Defining interpersonal communication. The term interpersonal refers to between persons or involving personal relationships, and it is a two-way flow and involves the following: information, content, feelings related to the content, perceptions of both self and others, and responses to the context in which the conversation is happening. And it includes verbal and non-verbal forms of communication and can be the both synchronous, that is face to face, and or asynchronous, that is emails, chats, messages, etc. To understand the interpersonal communication process, it is important to understand a few models like the two-person relationship model, the communication in context model, and the strategic model. And unlike the prior one-way model and interaction model, these models highlight a few important aspects and which are useful in analyzing how things work. And significance of interpersonal communication. What are the significance? Human evolution relied heavily on interpersonal contact. According to previous studies, early humans who lived in communities rather than alone were more likely to survive. The findings also suggest that those who have strong interpersonal ties are more likely to transmit these traits down to the next generation. And interpersonal abilities have a wide range of applications in the real world. They have a measurable effect on mental and physical well-being. People with superior interpersonal communication abilities are less anxious, have better stress management skills, and are happier in their personal and professional connections. Contrary to this, prolonged isolation and lack of interpersonal skills result in damages to the well-being of humans. And other than making relationship or health better, interpersonal communication skills are highly sought after by potential employers. All these examples show how interpersonal communication meets our basic needs as a human for security in our social bonds, health, and careers. Principles of interpersonal communication. What are the principles under this? And that is inescapable. First one is whether you like it or not, it is impossible to avoid communicating. If not verbally, the humans send much information non-verbally. Therefore, there is no way to escape the communication process. And irreversible. When words are spoken, they cannot be taken back. No matter how hard you explain what you mean or apologize, people may end up losing confidence in you. So, therefore, communication is irreversible in nature and complicated. To believe that communication is natural and easy is a myth. The process involves both verbal and non-verbal factors that lend to its interpretation. And owing to its complex nature, interpersonal communication is open to misinterpretation and highly contextual. The communication process does not happen in isolation. It operates in a psychological, environmental, and situational context. Hence, it is not in your control. It depends on the who, what, where, and why of that conversation. The end result ultimately depends on how the message is ultimately received. After understanding principle of interpersonal communication, it becomes important to understand the barriers to interpersonal communication. So let's see the barriers to interpersonal communication. First one is language. In any communication process, oral or written, the sender or encodes ideas which the receivers, that is decodes, understand and give feedback accordingly. In this process, language plays a very important role. The communication may fail if the sender and receiver do not have a reasonably comfortable common language as a medium to exchange ideas. And next is stress. Stressful situation can make people choose to remain detached or reserved in nature. And position. A superior who is hostile to subordinates' views and not open to suggestions will end up not receiving information and ideas. This will adversely affect interpersonal relationships. And attitude. People with the I, that is I viewpoint, are normally perceived as self-centered and unempathetic. This attitude can create a problem in communicating with other people in an organization, and people with an attitude keep themselves first, and thus every communication is centered around them. And next is distance. People separated by geographical boundaries and spatial distances may find it difficult to communicate. Perceptions. Rigid perceptual labeling makes it difficult for people to change their preconceived notion with already made up mind. We refuse to listen, and an attempt to achieve effective communication suffered badly. In other words, if one believes in a certain phenomenon, then convincing him or her otherwise will be a difficult task. For example, if the manager believes that distribution of sample goods among customers is futile, then convincing him or her about the need for an effective marketing strategy will have no benefits. And culture, the people with a different culture background find it difficult to interact and develop healthy interpersonal relationship. Technology, that face-to-face interaction is still superior to technology-based communication for developing effective interpersonal relationship, as in face-to-face communication one can get a more clear idea of posture, gesture and expression of the speaker as well as the reaction of the listener. So activity 1 is here from this subsection. So you just try to do it. It will help you for your more understanding of this chapter. And next is interpersonal communication model. What are the models are the diagram that are useful in analyzing the process of communication. These models help one who is trying to understand, diagnose and perhaps repair a communication process. In this section we will discuss 5 models that can help us to understand interpersonal communication in a better way. The case situation given in activity 2 highlights the problem in an effective communication process. One way model. So let's see. One way model is there is one sender, there is one receiver, in between message and delivery techniques are there. This is perhaps the oldest model of communication. It is based on Aristotle's rhetoric, that is theories revolving around this framework are termed the classical rhetoric and built around theories of argumentation as well as persuasion. The model emphasizes the sender's need to consider the right technique to present the right message to the right audience. So that is in figure 1 is there. Though the model is simple, it provides a theory of composition and communication for both oral and written discourse with an emphasis on persuasion. And despite limitations, it serves as a useful diagnostic tool. The major strength of this tool is that it emphasizes the significance of receiver. Interaction model. Interaction model of communication. The model was given by Wilbur Schramm in the year 1997 and builds upon the linear model of communication, which we will discuss in unit 2. Okay. There is an encoder, decoder is there, message is there in between, delivered through channel and media. There is noise in between, there is noise, and feedback also there. In feedback also there is one noise. Okay, so that is the interaction model of communication. Combining the ideas of several communication theories, the interaction model was upgradation of the one-way model. The model include four more concept to existing model: channel, encoding and decoding, noise, feedback, etc. And the participants take turn being the sender and receiver. They create meaning by sending and receiving messages in both physical and psychological settings. The approach rejects communication as a one-way linear process and instead adds feedback, making communication more interactive and a two-way process. In this model, the channel represents the source through which the message is sent. It can be verbal and non-verbal. Media represent various tools such as letters, memos, mobile phones, televisions, and social media website. Feedback is there. It includes written loop by which the sender receives reactions. It answers various questions that occur in the speaker's mind, like is my audience happy with my speech? Are my customers convinced with the product detail I shared with them, etc. So like that, as the name suggests, the interaction model of communication is more interaction focused. It does not judge communication as effective or ineffective, rather acknowledges that communication is nuanced and complex. It encourages the speaker to use feedback for simulating further questions like why is my boss not replying to my email, and why is my audience not looking interested, etc. Though the interaction model came up as a major improvement over the one-way communication model, it did not consider a few significant observations, which are: communication process does not happen sequentially and one step at a time as highlighted in the prior communication models. In the process of communication, the participant act both as sender and receiver simultaneously. The role of self and other perception and communication context. The other models were later developed to fill these gaps. Next is two-person relationship model. Although the interaction model was a major improvement over a one-way model, it had its own drawbacks. In terms of the communication process, the points this model ignored were: communication process does not happen sequentially, one step at a time as I highlighted in the prior communication models. In the process of communication, the participant act both as sender and receiver simultaneously. It excluded senders and receivers' perception of each other and themselves, and the wider social and organization settings in which the communication take place. According to the two-person relationship model, the communication process is reciprocal. The sender's view of and behavior towards the receiver are simultaneously affecting and being affected by the receiver, as represented in figure 3. Sender's view of and behavior towards receiver, and receiver's view of and behavior towards sender. So like that, and sender's view, way of thinking and feeling of himself or herself, and the sender's views, way of thinking and feeling of himself or herself. So two-person relationship model of communication is there. Using this model as a diagnostic tool, we will able to understand how the communication process is related to human behavior. In general, human beings tended to reach cause and effect conclusions. For example, Mr. A has slowed down on the project work because his project leader was not open to taking his recommendations. This is the most convenient one-way cause and effect explanation. However, in doing this, we ignore the possibility of Mr. A as not looking any more inspiration to the project leader. And this could be because Mr. A's lagging enthusiasm and output make him assume that his suggestions do not deserve much attention. The two-person relationship model suggests that we must look not only at the explicit behavior but also at how each perceives the other. According to this model, the people tended to behave in ways that confirm their self-perceptions. The model illustrates the strong influence of self-perception on behavior. Hence, self-perception, the perceptual point of view, and the interdependence of two on each other constitute the key ideas in this model. So, activity 2 is here. This case situation, you just go through this and try to do it. It will help you for your more understanding of this subsection. And the transaction model of communication. So, with the progress in communication studies, scholars started viewing communication as more than process that it is used to carry on conversations and conveying meanings. And they observed that all communication happens within some kind of context, while the earlier three model emphasized the importance of looking into the individual and their communication behavior. The transaction model of communication include the conceptualization of communication, the role of sender and receiver, and the role of context. The transaction model of communication describes communication as a process in which the communicators generate social realities within relational and cultural context. The model revealed three new factors, and these are group characteristics, the factor that exists in the group or groups in which the communication belongs, such as the norms of behavior a group establishes and expect its members to follow them, and organizational structure and culture. This includes the organization design, policies, rules, hierarchies, traditions, values, etc. Task characteristics. This includes the nature of work or the problem about which the communication is taking place. The model asserts that we do not only communicate to exchange message, but we communicate to develop connections, form intercultural alliances, shape our self-concept, and engage in discussion with the others to form communities as represented in figure 4 is here. Transaction model of communication. Okay, creation of meaning, that is cultural context, that is communicator is there, social context, communicator is here, physical and psychological context, and relational context. Unlike the interaction model, which assumes that players switch role as senders and receiver, the transaction model assumes that we are both senders and receivers at the same time. The transaction model also includes a more complex understanding of context, and it prompts us not to simply hunt for an ideal or an offender in a complex situation, since the transaction model of communication views communication as a result of the multiple forces and functional interdependence. It discourages us from judging good and bad until we thoroughly understand it, and before shaping our opinions. The model urges us to see communication as having multiple rather than single explanations, to see interdependencies, and to seek relationship between communication and the context in which it occurs. Unlike the interactive model, which suggests that participants alternate positions as sender and receiver, the transactional model suggests that we are simultaneously senders and receivers. Okay, so this is about today's section, and for more MBA videos, you just do like, share, and subscribe our channel. Thank you so much.
i-tutor Academy presents Ignou Mba complete syllabus coverage classes for individual students, semester-wise subject with online and flexible timing. For more details, contact on +916 238 21785.